Hello, General Biology, and welcome to the second screencast in the Photosynthesis Chapter 8 series. And we're going to start off by watching a little introductory video on pigments and light. So let's start there.
In the chloroplast, the light and dark reactions of photosynthesis occur. The thylakoid discs, which are flattened sacs, contain light-capturing pigments and proteins that carry out the light reactions, which require light to work. In the liquid stroma, the dark reactions occur. They don't have to happen at night, they just don't require light to function. In the membranes of the thylakoid discs are tiny pigment molecules like chlorophyll, which capture energy from light. Chlorophyll A is the most common type, but there's also chlorophyll B. Let's look at how they absorb, reflect, and transmit light. Chlorophyll A absorbs and uses mostly blue light and a little orange and violet. It reflects all of the green light and some of the yellow light. Chlorophyll B absorbs mostly violet light and red light, but also reflects greens and yellows. Because of this, plants with lots of chlorophyll look green. But plants would be wasteful if they had no way to capture some of that green light, and it turns out they do. Carotenoids absorb colors that chlorophyll cannot, so that the plants can capture more energy from light. Notice that the carotenoids have the ability to absorb some of the green light, and they usually have a yellow, orange, red, or brown color. We can see these beautiful colors in the fall when the chlorophyll breaks down and the carotenoids are left behind. To really understand how chlorophyll works and how photosynthesis harnesses the energy from light, we need to know a little bit about light and waves. The peak of the wave is called the crest, and the distance from crest to crest is called the wavelength. The number of waves that pass a certain point per second is called the frequency. Low-frequency waves move slow and tend to be larger, and high-frequency waves are fast and high energy with short wavelengths. The spectrum of electromagnetic radiation, which includes visible light, has slow, big radio waves on one end and high-energy, high-frequency gamma waves at the other end. Visible light makes up only a tiny portion of the spectrum, but it includes all of the colors we can see: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, or Roy G. Biv. The light towards the red end have lower energy, bigger wavelengths, and a lower frequency. And light toward the violet end has high energy, small wavelengths, and high frequency. When light strikes an electron, the electrons get excited and jump to a higher energy level. Then that excited electron can either be captured by a molecule that's part of a chemical reaction, like in the light reaction in photosynthesis, or the electron will fall down to a lower energy level. When an electron falls to a lower energy level, it emits a photon of light. In this case, the electron has fallen to its ground state, the lowest energy level. Chlorophyll will emit a red light when it falls to a lower energy level. Thanks for watching this episode of Teacher's Pet. Don't forget to like.
Alright, so you saw a little bit of an introduction of what we call the electromagnetic spectrum. So we have to understand about that spectrum first before we can understand how light energy is going to be trapped and used in the process of photosynthesis. So as you heard, light is going to travel in waves, and you can see those waves right here. And the distance between each crest, the top of each wave, is called the wavelength. So light emits different wavelengths. The farther the wavelength is apart, the less frequency there is. Which that kind of makes sense because, look, if we look from this section to this section, we can only count 1, 2, 3, 4 waves, okay? But as the frequency increases, where the wavelengths are closer together, as we're looking at this end, look at, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's a greater frequency of those waves. So what that means is light energy emits different frequencies, different amounts of energy. So in the visible spectrum, which is the part where we have our rainbow, where we have the red, the orange, the yellow, the blue, the indigo, and the violet, what we see is different wavelengths. red light has the greatest distance between the wavelengths. So that means less frequency and less energy emitted. Where at the opposite end, violet light has more energy, a greater frequency of wavelengths. So there's more energy being emitted. So the way that we get that energy is by harnessing that energy from the wavelengths. So this light that we see is known as the visible light or white light. And it contains the red, the orange, the yellow, the blue, the green, the indigo, the violet, or the Roy G. Biv. Red being the less amount of energy, and violet being the shortest distance, having the greater amount of energy. So now that we know about light, we need to know about how light is trapped. And light is trapped in special compartments known as pigments. And these pigments are found in the chloroplast. And plants such as, producers such as plants, algae, and some protists will actually contain these chloroplasts. Now chloroplast, as we take a look at it here, is a double-membraned organelle. We learned about this in Chapter 7, and I said we're going to really learn a lot more about it in Chapter 8, so here we are. So it's made up of an outer membrane and then another inner membrane, and then these little disc-shaped structures that we see here. Each little disc is referred to as a thylakoid, and a stack of these discs is referred to as a granum. When we cut the thylakoid open, they are made up of a membrane, a phospholipid bilayer membrane, just like we've talked about as far as cell membranes are concerned, and they have a fluid-filled center, which is referred to as the lumen. Now surrounding these stacks of granum is a fluid-filled space, this gray space here, which is referred to as the stroma. And the stroma is a suspension, which means that there are chemical compounds that are suspended within the liquid portion of this. So in these chloroplasts are the reactions of photosynthesis, because also in these thylakoid membranes is that pigment chlorophyll, and it's going to be that chlorophyll that is going to be able to trap the energy from the sunlight. It actually traps the red, the orange, the blue, the indigo, and the violet wavelengths, and it reflects the yellow and the green wavelengths. So it can use that energy that it traps for the process of photosynthesis. So that process of photosynthesis has two reactions. The light-dependent reactions, which will happen in the thylakoid membranes and will require the energy of sunlight, and the light-independent reactions, which will happen in the stroma, which do not require the direct energy of sunlight in order for the reactions to occur. So what we're going to do in this chapter is we're going to talk about both of those reactions, and we're going to break them down, as I said, into the light-dependent reactions and the light-independent reactions. And here's what you need to know in general, and I do have it written over here. The light-dependent reactions, their job is going to be to split water. And from splitting water, they're going to get hydrogen ions. And remember, ions, they lose electrons, so they're positively charged. So we're going to get those hydrogen ions, and we're going to get electrons, and then we're going to have oxygen, because water is H2O. So we're going to have 2 hydrogen ions, we're going to have 2 electrons, and we're going to have 1 oxygen. Now, what's going to happen is the electrons and the hydrogens are going to be used to produce something known as an electron carrier. And that's very simple. An electron carrier carries electrons. but this electron carrier is a chemical compound, and that chemical compound is known as NADPH. In the process of getting NADPH, we're also going to get some ATP. And that ATP and that NADPH, the products of the light-dependent reactions, are going to be used in the light-independent reactions. So that NADPH and the ATP, along with the carbon dioxide that the plant cells bring in, that's how carbohydrates are going to be produced. So this is the general overview of the reactions. So here's that chloroplast again. And we're going to see that the light-dependent reactions are going to happen within that thylakoid membrane. So here's the thylakoids. And as I said, they're going to be able to trap that light energy in the pigments of chlorophyll that are found within the thylakoid membranes. The thylakoid membranes also have water in them, and that light energy that is being trapped is going to be used to split that water. And that water, as it's split, sorry for that little interruption there, I stopped. So the water splitting, the hydrogen ions and the electrons are going to be used to make NADPH. NADPH is an electron carrier. Notice it has hydrogen here. The hydrogen will reattach to the electrons that were in the split, and we'll get this NADPH, and they're going to carry that NADPH to the light-independent reactions. In the process, a little bit of ATP is going to be made, and that ATP is going to be carried into the light-independent reactions. As a byproduct, we're going to get oxygen, and oxygen is going to leave the cycle of reactions. Okay, so that's what happens within the thylakoids. And again, this is an overview, so if you're not understanding, we're going to take it step by step and fill in all the little details. So now these are the light-dependent reactions. The light-dependent reactions produced ATP and NADPH, which are now in the stroma of the chloroplast. And there's other chemicals. There's some 5-carbon sugars that are present within, or not 5-carbon sugars, 5-carbon compounds, excuse me, that are present within the stroma, as well as carbon dioxide. And they're going to chemically react together. And that reaction is going to be a cycle of reactions that will produce some compounds called PGALs. And 2 of the PGALs will leave the cycle to form sugar, and the rest of the PGALs will be back in to join up with some more carbon dioxide, and the energy for the reactions will come from the ATP and the NADPH. And these are called the light-independent reactions, or otherwise known as the Calvin cycle. Alright, so I know that that seems a little bit overwhelming. We're going to leave this right now, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to look specifically at the light-dependent reactions and the light-independent reactions in the next play pause it.